to the modern market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money in an ideal world on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have Bitcoin dipping aggressively before bouncing back aggressively up to 97K. Just wanted to touch on XRP as well, leading the majors up 6% on the week, with all of the rest of the majors down on the week. We'll break that down in just a little bit. We've got crypto company acquisition season starting. MoonPay buys crypto payment processor for $175 million. And blockchain forensics firm Chain Analysis acquires AI-powered fraud detection platform Alteria. And finally, the Sony L2 Sonium goes live with some criticism over freezing tokens. So we'll break all of those down bits, all of those news articles down in just a little bit to get into the details there. We'll also talk price action on crypto and NFTs, plus a bit of a discussion on Hyperliquid today. The founder put out an interesting post. Want to spend some time diving into that as well, so stay tuned. We have got Legendary and Rahim in the co-host seats today. We're ready to get into it, but just a reminder, friends, before we do, nothing that we say here is financial advice. The market is very, very risky, and as usual, we do not know anything for sure, so please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Rahim, it is Tuesday, it is the 14th of January. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, everybody. Feeling super good, especially because I got to see the two of you IRL this week. So that has been super awesome for the three of us to be. Of course, super nice to see the markets rally up really well. Of course, we'll get into the discussion. I think AI cons rallied up really well since last night. I did play some bets, so that turned out well. But yeah, excited to be here. Excited for the discussion today.
Nice. Legendary is definitely going to walk us through some of the AI agent rebound in a little bit. So I'll definitely bring you in there to talk about the plays that you went after. But Legendary, I was just explaining to Rahim, one of the things we did over the weekend was go to it was a very nice beach club style thing. And I just proposed for next weekend that we go to a golf club. And Rahim's like, no, I don't know anything about golf. I don't want to go. And it's like, it's basically the same thing. All clubs are the same. You just go, you sit, you have a drink, you have some food. One's at a beach, one's at a golf club. Like, it's just the same thing. But Legendary, I was wondering, you're not really into golf either, but can you see my trend of thinking here?
I can see it, but I said it in the one group chat that we have, that this is the year for me where I'm gonna learn playing golf, because it's finally the time. I can feel it. It's the not being able to play golf FOMO has increased too much, so I definitely need to pick up a new skill.
I was also so I'm all for that, because I think we can do modern market retreats and we can just play golf potentially.
Is this a form of rite of passage? I feel like a lot of people in crypto, they start eventually when they made like some decent amount of like bets and wealth, I feel like they venture into golf.
I think this is what you need to do. Overarch asking in the comments, Dubai has a top golf. Yes. So one of the reasons I've come out here for a little bit was just to, really lock in. I was telling Rahim, like I've been doing more social things here than I usually do. But one of the things I did go to was Top Golf on Sunday with a couple of friends, and it was pretty good. It was pretty fun. Rahim declined, obviously, but maybe next time.
We also spend the day together. I love how you're completely missing that part.
That's true. You're like, that is enough time with this guy. Don't need to also go play golf with him. Yeah, that's completely fair enough. Look, let's get into it. Enough with the golf chat. Let's get into the main price action and the headlines, as usual, coming from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Starting with the majors, Bitcoin is up 6% on the day. As I said, it dipped as low as 89K, went as, just on this bounce, went up to 97, just a bit beneath that now at 96. ETH is up 4% at 3.2. Okay, I mean, it's good that it's up 4%, but kind of depressing this at 3.2, but that's where we are. XRP up 9% to $2.50, up 6% on the week, whereas everything else is down on the week. Bitcoin's down 4% on the week. ETH is down 12% on the week. Solana's down 13% on the week. XRP up 6% on the week. Solana is up 6% today, back to $186. I have let's just keep it moving. We'll talk about XRP in a second. Getting into the headlines themselves, we said, I just mentioned the price action on Bitcoin and XRP. Legendary will break that down in a bit. Crypto company acquisitions are taking place. MoonPay's buying payment processor for $175 million, and Chain Analysis, a blockchain forensics firm, is also acquiring an AI-powered fraud detection platform, Alteria. We'll provide some of the detailed information in a bit. And then finally, Sony L2. Sonium goes live with some criticism over freezing tokens. A very interesting discussion there to be had, which we'll get into later, which is around IP, which is around the freedom to transact. A lot of people immediately trying to call the Sony chain a Fed chain because they're blocking certain launches. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll talk about it in a little bit. Some notable sales from around the space: CryptoPunk Fedora selling for 48 ETH, Azuki Elemental selling for 31 ETH. Remember, Anime Chain is launching pretty soon. That token allocation for Anime Coin is going to be coming pretty soon. And also Azuki Golden Headphones sold for 30 ETH. So Azuki's doing very, very strongly. But Legendary, talking of the NFTs, what else is going on that side of the market?
Absolutely. It is a bit of a green day for NFTs. We have Pudgy Penguins being up 4%, 24.2 ETH floor for the Pudgies, still down 13% over the last 7 days, but nonetheless a nice bounce to see. Bored Apes, on the other hand, down another 2%, down 10% over the last 7 days, 14.77 ETH floor for them. Azuki's, they are down 7% over the last 24 hours, up 4% over the last 7 days, 13.18 ETH floor for them. They obviously have been going up quite significantly over the last month, given that, as you mentioned, the Anime Coin TG is coming closer and closer. Doodles have a very green day. They are up 11.5%, 4.46 ETH floor for them. Still down 10%, 10.8% to be precise, over the last 7 days. And once again, we talked about them quite often. Kaito NFTs are basically unchanged over the last 24 hours. But the reason that I bring them up is that they're still one of the best performers over the last 7 days, 71% in the green, 7.25 ETH floor for the Kaito Genesis NFTs.
Another reason you bring it up, because you are holding. I think that's part of the reason. Good for you. Also good for Brad. We were talking about that yesterday as well. It's like he thinks he really should be selling them at this point, but I guess he's busy doing other stuff. Okay, and getting into the Web3 roundup to get you up to with everything else that's happened in the space. Where are we? Stablecoin Titan Tether. This was very interesting. Stablecoin Titan Tether announced that the entire Tether group will be relocating to El Salvador. Pretty interesting stuff. Coinbase wins partial victory as the court orders the SEC to justify rejection of crypto rulemaking petition. This is the ongoing battle between Coinbase and the SEC. So a small victory there. Blockchain forensics firm Chain Analysis acquires Alteria. Already mentioned that. Coinbase to list Solana meme coin Peanut. This came again with a little bit of criticism towards Coinbase listing coins that are not on base, for example. I think people think that they should really be pushing those specifically, something like virtuals, which is still not listed. And then finally, Artifact announces final quest for a new monolith with Nike, showing that on the screen for people who are watching in. Remember, we're live on YouTube and live on Twitter video as well. This brought back a lot of fun memories for me. I remember trading the original Nike monolith, really thinking that, the first NFT by Nike, what on earth could be inside this box? It was pretty amazing. And they were so expensive at the time. I've got a feeling, I've got two numbers in my head. I was either trading them around 4 ETH or 8 ETH, or maybe I traded them from 4 to 8, or bought them at 1 and sold them at 4 or something. But it was really, the hype on these was crazy. But obviously Artifact is, they're shutting down now. So I'm not quite certain what this one will entail, but maybe Ryan will know in a second. That's the Web3 roundup. To get you up to with everything else, we're going to be diving into the main headlines in just a bit. We're going to be talking Hyperliquid in a second too. But before we do that, Legendary, is there anything catching your attention from the rest of the news?
Yeah, I love how when you mentioned Artifact, Rahim's connection immediately dropped and he fell off the call and we had to bring him back up. The piece of news, however, that interests me the most of that is Tether moving to El Salvador, as you said, for the entire Tether group. That is something I definitely want to look more into to understand, or at least have a hypothesis, what the idea behind that move is. I mean, obviously El Salvador is very crypto friendly, have been buying up BTC massively, but I don't have a good answer why specifically El Salvador. And I think I'd love to have one because it's interesting to me.
Well, they've also got the president there is like hyper Bitcoin focused. They've got a bigger treasury, and I'm just looking at the official or the article from Cointelegraph. They said this was the reasons it gave themselves. Obviously, sometimes there are additional reasons beyond what people say for themselves. They said they want to go to El Salvador due to its forward-thinking policies, favorable regulatory environment, and growing Bitcoin-savvy community. I suspect, like most things, when as a former lawyer, when you really want to understand any answer to anything, like why a company is doing anything, it's probably just got something to do with tax. That's what I found 9 times out of 10 when you're really diving into things. But Funky, I see you with your hand raised, and you are a resident Bitcoin expert. So I'm going to throw to you, and then we've got Andrew with us too. Maybe wants to come in on this topic, so I'll throw to you in just a second. Funky, welcome to the stage, my friend. What are you thinking?
GM, no, that's exactly it, B-Check. There is no tax on crypto in El Salvador. This was something that happened last year. I'm working very closely with a company. We're actually building something from the ground up, and it has to do with RWAs, tokenization. One of the founders is deeply connected in the government. His father knows, his cousin is to the president. It's because there's no tax. And one of the reasons that you're probably going to see more and more businesses flock to this area, to El Salvador in particular, is because of these pro-crypto policies. But last year, they instituted a rule where anything that has to do with crypto has 0% tax on it. So one of the projects that I'm working with, they're actually, can't say too much, but basically working with big banks, tokenization, RWAs, precisely because of this no tax policy. It gives massive capital inflows, the ability to move money around without having to pay any kind of tax consequence. Obviously, it's just a boon for the entire country because you're bringing all this money in and everything else. And of course, there's going to be some kind of trickle down effects into the economy. So yeah, that you hit the nail on the head. I just wanted to make sure that I got up here and at least got to say that it's probably exactly that it's no tax.
Interesting. Very, very interesting stuff. Interesting to hear that some of the companies you're involved with as well are kind of looking at that option. Unsurprising, to be honest, if they're going to have such enticing terms put forward to you. Andrew, welcome to the stage, my friend. Good to have you with us. What are you thinking here?
Gem, guys, gem. The concept of like war on, I guess, Bitcoin, so to speak, war on innovation, I think is actually happening quicker than people like to admit. The concept of like war on Bitcoin sounds a little bit dumb, but I think if we were to operationalize that, I think it somewhat is already kind of happening. I think innovation is being pushed out of the States, kind of out of Western hemisphere, if you want to call it that, including Canada, my own country, which is brutal. The rest of the world's getting it right, more so to speak. I think we're lagging behind. Do you guys think within the next 4 years with the inauguration, the war on Bitcoin, where the U.S. actually takes more of an actual aggressive approach on this, changes?
Good question. I think my personal opinion probably just reflects the market's opinion, which is a lot of people have placed immediate bets on the future of crypto on the States, and that's probably reflected in the price. Sure, I think the Trump election probably sent all markets. It's not just crypto that moved. The other markets moved as well, because in general, they think that that's going to be exceptionally bullish. But I think you can't ignore the fact that specifically within crypto, yes, people perceive Trump to be pro markets in general. That is true. But specifically within crypto, there's clearly been steps taken with with the incoming administration to try to, they haven't done anything yet, right? They're just taking initial steps. But even the establishment of the crypto, I don't know the name of the group, the working group, the crypto czar, David Sachs being appointed to that role, And do you know what? I think there's obviously this ball that's taking place on Friday. What's the name of it? I tweeted it earlier. The crypto something ball that's taking place in Washington. Guys, do you know what I'm talking about? You want to fill it in here, or shall I just find it?
I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm looking for your tweet as you are speaking.
No, that's
Okay,
it.
so
It's the crypto ball.
Yeah. So Funky, there was a bunch of people asking me, like, is this real? I think it was real because Kyle Samani, the guy, I think founder or main investor for Multicoin Capital, tweeted that they were going. I also saw Mike Duda say that they were going. So this is like a crypto ball that's taking place on Friday evening, where you can go and celebrate the. I mean, what does it say here? The first crypto president. Now, again, there's a bunch of donation aspects to this. Like if you want general admission, there's this amount of money that you need to pay. If there's a VIP section, there's a this section, there's a that section. So it's a maybe partly a fundraiser as well. But I think this is all part of the bet that people, or part of the things that people are observing, that where people think that things are going to be slightly more encouraging in the States moving forward. I've also listened a lot to maybe the Blockworks podcast guys who like are operating out of New York, and I think they seem pretty positive too. So that's my assessment of it. Andrew, one more follow up before we hit into the main other topics today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll stack that. B-Check, do you think personally, like, it'll take a massive announcement for the market to respond to Trump's, I guess, pro-admin campaign? Or do you think it's something that, like, he can just even say a couple times, BTC, crypto, ETH, whatever, and the market will respond? Or do you think it's one of those things that takes, an actual infrastructure announcement where he's saying we're doing this over the next XYZ time frame, and market kind of rallies behind that? Like, what's your kind of overall like gut feeling? Is it something small, something big? Are we going to respond to anything? We're not going to respond to anything. Like, what are your thoughts in terms of market responding to what they're doing?
Based on nothing but gut, and as we always say on the show, like we don't know anything ultimately. Like I feel like the sell-off that was supposedly planned for the inauguration has kind of front run it. Like that's just my gut. And I think if anything positive happens, like the market's waiting for them to say something positive, and I think we could actually go up. I know that's even if there's an immediate sell-off, because oftentimes there's like an immediate sell-off. Kind of like, remember the ETFs? ETFs actually went up a bit, and then I think they dumped quite aggressively, and then they was just ready to move. Maybe something like that. That would be my gut feel, although I definitely do not know for sure when it comes to things like Bitcoin, to be completely honest. Like I just have my stack that I'm trying to add to slowly over time. So appreciate the questions there, Andrew. Very, very good questions. Good to reflect on that. I kind of took up all the time there, boys. Is there anything you wanted to come in there, Legendary or Rahim?
I'll cover more of that in the first headline, because there's actually a couple interesting developments that answer a bit of that question that Andrew just asked. Okay,
awesome. Let's wait for that then, to dive in a little bit deeper. Right. So before we get into the main headlines, I wanted to talk. We always do this little segment where we just talk about something else that's interesting. I want to talk a little bit about Hyperliquid. Jeff, the founder, came out and wrote this tweet. Very rarely tweets, actually. Tweets not very often. Just proposing the bull case. I wanted just to present that to you, take some time to share what was said, and then get our thoughts. One of the things that we made the point of the other day, although Bread was kind of pushing against it, was that in general, centralized activity is going down, decentralized activity is going up relative to centralized activity. So it's not necessarily the case that centralized activity is falling off a cliff. It's just that relative to decentralized activity, it is falling. It's losing its market share. And yeah, I just wanted to bring this up and see what we thought. So Hyperliquid obviously came out not very long ago. It is went from nothing to around $20 at the moment. This is what they feel like they've achieved. They said they redefined the crypto meta to put community above all. With Hyperliquid, this is one of the reasons it's done so well. It said there are no investors, no market makers, and no fees paid to any company. Billions of dollars of value were created by a common vision and relentless hard work. This value went directly to hundreds of thousands of users. This vision is actually something that's really appealing to people, right? And I think a lot of teams are trying to minimize the people on their cap table as a consequence. They're doing things like echo rounds where, you know, individual investors can come in at the same terms as maybe the previous VC round, trying to build like some core community that have got in at a reasonable number, at a reasonable valuation, so that everyone can make money together and so that the price can go up. That's the intention, of course. He also said they became the first mature permissionless financial hub where liquidity and UX matched the most liquid centralized venues. Recent highlights include $15 billion of 24-hour volume, reaching 20% of Bybit futures and 8% of Binance futures volume. So that's pretty impressive numbers that they're posting up. They also said they reinvented several of the most entrenched and predatory centralized practices to be crypto aligned, fair, transparent, and accessible. He made some predictions for 2025, and this is where I'd probably want to go to next. He said, I expect the technology of Hyperliquid to close much of the gap towards housing all of finance. The maturing technology will include a growing and permissionless validator set while improving the world-class liquidity infrastructure that Hyperliquid provides. Some concrete predictions. Here we go. Number one, multiple billion-dollar applications protocols will be built on top of Hyperliquid. They will own their full stack, but tap into the ever-growing liquidity and community. Number two, more than 50% of volume from new DeFi projects will happen natively on Hyperliquid. Hungry teams will value the integration of centralized exchange-level liquidity with the permissionless accessibility of blockchains. And then finally, millions of users will use Hyperliquid without knowing about the blockchain at all. Just like Web 2, users will experience the magic of their favorite products without thinking about the underlying technology. So that's the vision, Legendary. We've obviously seen Hyperliquid become very much beloved by a lot of people. People have made a lot of money, so they're pretty happy with it. What are your thoughts on Hyperliquid? It's already risen very far up relative to where, from where it came from its inception. What are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on the vision? Where does it go from here?
Yeah, Hyperliquid is an interesting one because you have obviously the EVM layer coming. You have that ability to build on top of that, and I feel like that there's still a good part of the timeline that just sees it as a place to go and trade perps and swap coins, and doesn't see the whole infrastructure play behind that. And we already have established teams who will launch tokens via Hyperliquid. And by doing that, basically, the question becomes, will it be able to compete with the bases, with the mega ETHs? Although it's not in that sense an L2, but this is how you basically would position yourself against, because you do try to attract both users as well as builders to scale up the economic activity and the things that one can do on Hyperliquid. So the concrete predictions, I like that the term predictions is being used, because it's like more, these are the stretch goals for my company, so it's not really a prediction, are very, very ambitious. Seeing more than 50% of volume from new DeFi projects happening natively on Hyperliquid would be an insane stat to achieve, especially with more chains launching, with Abstract coming. Obviously, Abstract not being DeFi first, but also following that playbook that Jeff has mentioned in the third prediction, saying, millions of users will use Hyperliquid without knowing about the blockchain at all, just something that Abstract has said in a similar vein. So a very, very much a big fan of Hyperliquid. But again, I feel like especially that second goal, 50% of volume from new DeFi projects will happen natively on Hyperliquid, is extremely ambitious.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely ambitious goals. I think the founder acknowledges that as well. One of the things... Go on.
No, I just was agreeing with you.
Okay. One of the things I was going to say was, I actually think on the DeFi side of things, I think tapping into the liquidity somehow, I think would be very, very attractive. Obviously, the liquidity is very deep. One question, maybe Rahim, you could come in on this as well. I saw a tweet by Bread that made me think of this. It's kind of questioning the decision making of projects that are going to exist on a different chain but launching on Hyperliquid to kind of take advantage of, the mindshare, the activity that's taking place there at the moment. So I wonder whether, when they're trying to build Hyperliquid out, they said that all these apps are going to be built on top. I would have thought it feels like a much more DeFi first, financialized platform. It wouldn't necessarily be cultural stuff on there, or I think Abstract and Hyperliquid, you just think of them in very different buckets, right? Or at least that's my instinct. Am I wrong there? Why do you think some of these teams have gone there, at least for the coin to be there for a period of time? Like, what's your thought on them doing that? Because Anime is on Hyperliquid, right? Infinigods have launched, or will. I don't know if their token is live, but the God token is going to be on Hyperliquid. So what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think in general, right now, I think Hyperliquid, if you're just talking on the DeFi front, it's the only protocol that's kind of like doubling down on this idea of like an off-chain Binance thing. So I think there's this whole liquidity that like people are trying to tap into. But like I think a lot of people are building those ecosystems out on different chains. I don't know if you guys saw yesterday, but like Abstract dropped their whole swapping ecosystem that they're building on Abstract. And one of their team members actually retweeted saying that, wait, did I just see a swap without an approval on EVM? Is this something that we've been asking for? How is this being done? So they are kind of building that. There's another protocol, RampX, under the Girason ecosystem that's coming out. They're also kind of building like an on-chain Binance, except they're also having cross-chain swaps. So you could swap like WIF all the way to like virtuals on their platform, super quick, super fast. I just think like this narrative, this cycle, especially with like the FTX fallout in the last years, is that we definitely need to dethrone of how Binance and Coinbase work as like liquidity ecosystems. Like yesterday, Coinbase listed Peanut, and everyone was just like, this meme is gone. Like, what are we talking here? No one's talking about it. Why aren't you listing your own virtual ecosystem? So I feel like right now, a lot of people, I'm saying this from my limited knowledge, my limited perspective, that's seeing it as like a liquidity ecosystem of, okay, there's a lot of attention there, there's a lot of volume there. They are going down this route of becoming the on-chain Binance of things. But I think that narrative is going to be taken by different apps and stuff, which is why I do agree with Legendary. The idea of 50% volume coming from Hyperliquid is a crazy ambition, just because it's removing this idea that other people are trying to build similar products on similar ecosystems that are even like omni-chain. So I think, it's going to be a big narrative this cycle.
I like it. One of your points just there, I think, was pretty important, because that's one of the points the founder made too, which is they've kind of disrupted the model, which is, this kind of opaque system for listings. Whereas in the Hyperliquid universe, you can just bid. You can bid. I think they're pretty expensive, but the point is you can bid, you can get your spot listing if you wish. And there's like a process to that. So that in itself is pretty interesting that that is available to people. Look, maybe final question, Legendary, before we get into the main headlines. We haven't really done this conversation for a while. Talking about Hyperliquid, we're mentioning Abstract. I put out some tweets about Berachain. Modad's in the conversation. Mega ETH you mentioned already. Like, there's a few things, and I'm sure someone's going to message me. In fact, underneath my previous tweet when I mentioned these things, someone messaged me about Ape Chain. Someone's messaged me about different chains. There's a bunch of things or different opportunities around at the moment. Just from your personal perspective, what's the one or two that's kind of catching your attention the most?
I mean, apart from the typically interest in everything that goes on with AI, and that is the
Yes.
chain agnostic bit. To me, it would be Abstract, probably just because it's the one place where I'm closest with teams that are building on Abstract, where I'm advising two teams that are building on Abstract as well. So that's where I have most of my exposure biased towards. Hence, this is also where most of my interest lies.
Fair enough. Okay, so a lot of opportunity on Abstract, I assume, as a consequence of that. But look, let's keep it moving, because we've got three interesting headlines to get into. Legendary, we talked about the majors having a pretty strong bounce back yesterday, along with the AI agents. So you're going to take us through a little bit of both of those sectors. Just tell us what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I want to structure this is first to take a look at the Bitcoin price action to just get an idea what happened over the last week. On the major side of things, understand potentially a bit of the reasons behind why we're moving up. And then separately from that, take a look at the AI agents, because otherwise it just gets too overwhelming. So starting with Bitcoin, we've seen over the last week, Bitcoin correcting from, basically I'm sharing the chart on screen, from 101K all the way down to 90K, briefly flirted with 89K. That was yesterday. And then we recovered pretty violently all the way up to 97.5K and are sitting at 96K right now. Very similar price action for Solana, for ETH as well, with the exception being that Ripple has outperformed all three of the other majors. And there's been an interesting article in the Washington Post yesterday, January 13th, that Cointelegraph and so many other news outlets picked up as well, saying that Donald Trump could issue crypto executive orders on first day, addressing, on the one hand, crypto debanking and the bank accounting policy when he retakes his presidency. That is the one that we've talked about on the show, SAB 121, quite frequently. I think Sammy made a very extensive segment on that as well, basically saying that current bank accounting policy requires banks holding crypto to list the digital asset as a liability. And this is one of the first things that Trump wants to address. And again, according to this Washington Post report from yesterday, it seems like we could see some legal action, some executive orders as early as day one. So that was definitely something, going back to Andrew's question, what needs to happen for the market to react. And apparently, if we have reports on legal action, executive orders being taken on day one, that is a very, very strong signal to the market, because I feel like we've been in this limbo of expectation mismatch, or of not even knowing what to expect. On the one hand, we had those endless discussions about the Bitcoin strategic reserve. What does it mean? Will we maintain the status quo? Will the US government actually be buying Bitcoin proactively? When will that happen? Points being made, on the one hand, it has to happen during the first 100 days, because otherwise other governments will front run the states. Other people saying, nope, you can't do that fast. It will take way more time. And I feel like the market is currently definitely in the position where it is watching the inauguration very closely. It's watching reports and rumors around potential actions being taken very closely, and is happy to react in a positive way. It's happy to react with that recovery that we've seen in the majors once we heard that news. Obviously, we still have a couple economical numbers that we're waiting to come out over the course of this week. We'll have the CPI coming out on Wednesday as well. So there's definitely been a selling going on from a macroeconomic perspective as well, that has affected tech stocks as well, with inflation fears, with interest rates probably not being cut to the extent that we expected them being cut. So that's the negative side of it. But again, on the positive side, in crypto specific, we've seen a positive reaction on potential legal action being taken earlier than probably we have expected. I'm just going to pause here and give you a chance to come into the discussion before we go on with the AI side of things.
Yeah, the only thing I'm really glad that you brought up, because I think it's probably the most important thing ultimately, like when you're very core in crypto and when you've just kind of come up in this industry specifically, the macro stuff can sometimes play into the background. I actually think it's probably the most important stuff at the moment. And there's genuinely been a feeling that rates will not be coming down as fast because of inflation fears. And as much as people would love for these assets to be entirely uncorrelated, as far back as the data shows, I think what the story would say is, if rates come down, that is good for your Bitcoin. And the expectation was rates would start to come down, and those cuts would come much faster. And there's just a question mark against that now, because it doesn't look like that might be the case. There's definite inflation fears, and so reducing those rates would make that inflation, or could potentially worsen that inflation. So I think there's a legit question mark against it at the moment. So glad you brought that up as a dampening factor on crypto at the moment until we get some more clarity there. Let's get into the AI agent stuff though, Legendary, because we were lamenting the red in the charts yesterday, but you're saying today is a bit of a different picture.
Yeah, and that holds true on both the Solana as well as the base set of things. Just taking a quick look at Fartcoin. Fartcoin up 50% over the last 24 hours, went as low as 640-ish mil, recovered to 1.16 bill, is trading at 1.06 bill right now. So definitely seeing that strong recovery, not only with Fartcoin, but as well with other major AI agents on the Solana side of things. Similar price action happening on virtuals as well. Not only is the main token up 20-ish%. Again, I think that went as low as $2.1 and is at 260-ish right now. But we also see that price action being reflected in some of the main agents, Game being up 50%, AI XPT being up 40%, Veda being up 60%, Sequoia being up 70%. I think Trust was up 50% as well. Polytrader being up 55%. So an outsized recovery, not across the board, because some of the medium to smaller agents that have obviously corrected down 50 to 60%, that holds true on both, again, the Solana as well as the base side of things, have not recovered. So it is a bit of a consolidation, although I admit if you look at the virtuals front page, it seems like everything is pumping. But that is definitely not the case. There's been agents who have not been able to profit from that reversal in momentum. And it seems that have consolidated at least a little bit. I wouldn't call it like a full consolidation into the winners, because for that to happen, we'd only expect to see, 3 to 5 agents being up, and there's still more than 20 who have recovered massively. But again, it's not like that every agent has pumped and has bounced back.
Look, and by the way, when we say bounce back, like, okay, fine, virtuals has bounced back. It's up whatever percentage is today, but it's down aggressively from its high. It's high however many weeks ago, whether it's 10 days ago or so, went up to $5. Okay, today it's bounced back, but it's at like 270 maximum, right? So
that's interesting that you pointed out, because there's a clear difference. So yes, virtuals is probably down 40-ish% from its all-time high. If you then take a look at something like the XPT chart and zoom out a bit on that, you will see that that had topped at 650 mil and went again all the way down to 370 mil twice and recovered to 550 mil. So that is trading way closer to all-time high. That's probably like 20% away from all-time high, as opposed to the actual infrastructure token, which is 40% away from the all-time high. So definitely you see more of the volatility both ways on the agent side of things when it comes to the dumps, but also when it comes to the stronger recovery stories.
Fair enough. I think that is fair. I saw an Andrew Kang article written specifically on AXBT, so I think that might have had something to do with it. Andrew Kang, a very prominent investor in the space. One final question on this, more of a personal one, Legendary, then Rahim, maybe you can give a sense of this as well, because I know you're all over the culture coins, the meme coins, and all of this stuff as well. You put a tweet out yesterday, Legendary, about your personal positioning. You said I can't remember the exact percentage, was it 60-something% in stables? Maybe you had hoped to be a little bit more. What's your thinking here in the general market? Like, you've obviously been allocated a lot to this risk stuff. How are you personally just thinking this through?
Yeah, absolutely. My portfolio has been basically majors on the one hand, and then the riskiest stuff, most risk on the other hand, trading the entire. I said there's not really an in between for me, and I've been taking profits significantly over the last 6 weeks, basically. I went as high as 64% in stables, took out even more yesterday, should be like around 75% in stables right now, which is not a reflection that I think that the bull market is over. It's more a reflection that I managed to take out very significant profits, and I, didn't want to do the thing that I did the cycles before, which is round tripping them. So I'm happy to take those profits out earlier, but also to have that oversight again in my portfolio, because this is how I'm thinking. So I had like 200-ish AI holdings, which I considered significant enough
Which is insane, by the way.
to have a look at. So AI plus AI memes. And I was like, okay, we've seen this first wave of consolidation that I just mentioned. Yes, a lot of things are recovering, but not everything. So I was happy to sell basically today the coins that have recovered, but not as strongly as the top performers, consolidate a bit more into my bigger holdings like AIXPT, like Trust, where I've also have been buying some of the dips. So I wanted to have a tremendously leaner position when it comes to the AI agents. Why? Because I know abstract is coming, because I know so many other things are coming. And I'm going to do the same thing again there. I'm going to focus my attention there. I'm going to end up with hundreds of tokens, which and NFTs, which hopefully a lot of them will move up and will go down as aggressively. And I don't have the bandwidth to manage a portfolio that has hundreds of tokens in both abstract, AI, and maybe also another third chain that I might be looking into or not. So I feel like
That's a great call.
my personal trend indicators, my gut feeling is shifting. I'm not saying AI is over, but I will definitely say that a lot of exposure will come to things like abstract, also from the AI side of things. I want to make the thing that I traded before that way leaner and way easier to manage. That I can just look one wallet, see 5-6 tokens, see if I have to do anything or if I want to do anything, and then be in full degen mode with the next thing that I'm investing my time into.
Fair enough. I think that's a pretty interesting answer. Trying to think about where the puck is going rather than where it is, right? And as you said, it might even be the case that it is AI stuff that you do on abstract. It's just you just need to tidy up what you've got already in order to do that stuff. Okay, interesting stuff. Rahim, one from you before we get into the next headline. Personal thoughts at the moment? AI, memes, stables, majors. How are you thinking about it?
I think AI agents are doing something very similar that you would see meme coins do. And I think like AIXBT and a couple of tokens are a great example. So you would see Bitcoin dumped by 10%, and then you will see like these AI coins dumped by 40%. And then you'll have like a 3% recovery on BTC, and you would see these AI coins run up a lot. And I remember seeing this like a lot with like Pepe and Popcat and What Point, that they dump extensively, but the moment BTC recovers, they go high up like really quick, really fast. So that's something that's been super exciting. I actually got into like a very short-term trade, which I didn't realize would be such a short-term trade, because I bought a bunch of stuff yesterday and I'm already out of it. Like there were 6 coins I bought yesterday that I'm already out of it. To be honest, I'm surprised of how they kind of recovered how memes used to do back in November and October. But I think it's kind of like important to see. I think at this point, personally for me, there are like a good amount of coins that I feel like in on the AI sector are pretty good winners for me to buy them on like massive dips. And yeah, something that's I swing trade a lot of that on memes. I've started swing trade like that a lot on the AI agent side of things. And other than that, like I exited them because I'm on the same boat as Legendary, that I'm like keeping all my capital to go all in on abstract ecosystems.
Interesting. Full house on going all in on abstract. Well, I'll just probably do what you guys do. And I kind of like doing Hyperliquid as well. So interesting stuff. Right. Let's get into the next headline. We've only got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to do just a few minutes on this one and then want Rahim to give you a little bit of a breakdown on what's going on with the Sony chain as well. Basically, these two bits of news we've connected together because it seems like there's a bit of crypto M&A activity, which is great because I guess it's a signal to the market that crypto businesses are open for business. I think the change in administration means that people are happy to go out and be a bit more expansionary. So the two different companies is that the first, if you share the chain analysis one, Legendary. Okay, we'll do that one first then. Don't worry, I've got that one as well. So the first is MoonPay buying crypto payment processor Helio for $175 million. Pretty significant. Just the top bits of news you need to know there is that MoonPay is buying Helio, Solana-powered crypto payment processor. The deal is reported to have a price tag of $175 million. And the MoonPay CEO said the acquisition is an important step in advancing our vision for the future of payments. The Miami-based company aims to expand its trading and market-based volume using Helio's products. And so, yeah, it's pretty significant from that sense. The company supports over 6,000 merchants and 1 million users. Meanwhile, MoonPay has over 20 million users, the statement said. So just kind of adding users into their system. In the next one, you've got blockchain forensics firm Chain Analysis acquiring AI-powered fraud detection platform Alteria. This is the blockchain forensics firm Chain Analysis, who intend to use the acquisition of the Israeli firm Alteria to bolster its illicit transaction prevention strategy. Specifically, they'll use Alteria's fraud identification infrastructure to help spot where individuals lose fiat money to fraud before the funds move into crypto. So this was around $150 million. So look, on some level, what the companies specifically do is kind of interesting. Well, it is definitely interesting. But what is more interesting to me at the moment, and it's something which Yano from Blockworks has been speaking about a lot, and I follow what they kind of talk about in New York quite often, is that it feels like there will be much more M&A activity in crypto for crypto-specific companies moving forward. And although this is not related to it, but it's kind of touching it in a way, XRP. The reason why XRP is outperforming is because it's US made, right? I mean, I think Trump made that funny statement where it's like, did he make it or did people make it up? Where it's like, you're going to make, it's almost like the idea, like any crypto that's made in the USA, obviously crypto is not literally made anywhere in a sense. But if you're made in the USA, you're going to thrive, or that's the intention for the administration, to enable those people to thrive moving forward. And this M&A activity, given that a lot of it comes out of the US, or the big ticket deals, that's where they are, you know, I think that should be helpful for people moving forward, give people confidence to make these kind of bigger moves. So that's my thought there. Unless anyone has any thoughts, maybe Legend, do you want to come in quickly on any reflections there before we keep it moving?
Yeah, I think that together with the Tether news, the strategic move to El Salvador for them, then again here a couple strategic M&A activities, also in the expectation of a tremendously easier regulatory environment, is something that we are going to see probably way more often in the future. Also from the US versus EU perspective, again you have the markets in crypto asset, the MiCA regulation being in effect in the EU, which is something that, for example, is not very pleasant for Tether as a stablecoin provider. And then again, we'll see what will happen on the US side of things. So if those executive orders and are to come relatively fast, I think we'll see an acceleration of both M&A activity, but as well as companies moving and flocking to different jurisdictions.
Okay. I like it. Sounds pretty positive in that sense. So just definitely wanted to bring that news to you. I know it's not like a market point in the sense that it's not about what asset you can specifically buy to make money on it, but like, look, this bigger ticket stuff to do with the corporate environment is pretty important, I think, in setting the tone for the rest of the industry and the rest of the marketplace. So let's keep it moving to the final headline now. Rahim, you're going to give us a bit of an update, a bit of a breakdown on what's going on with the Sony blockchain, which went live, I believe it was last night. So what's going on there?
Cool. So Sony launched their blockchain yesterday called Sonium, which is essentially like a quick TLDR. It's built on OP Stack under Sony Block Solutions. They have like a bunch of partners from like Circle, Astra Network, Chainlink. They built out this ecosystem with this whole idea of like, we're building this chain to evoke emotion. So the two statements I see them using over and over again is to evoke emotion and to really like house IP ecosystems. They obviously had like a lot of FUD when they came out because they are kind of building it in like a very centralized way. They can freeze your asset. The blockchain explorer doesn't show things that they don't approve on. So on the timeline, everyone was calling it as like the Fed chain. There were some people who deployed like some meme coins that you could not see, you could not have access to it. So there's like a lot of money that's just like frozen around. So there's just been like a lot of FUD around the ecosystem. I personally have like a very hot take on it. I actually think the approach that they're taking isn't as crazy to how Sony as a company operates to begin with. I feel like a lot of times when we think about wanting consumers to come to Abstract or to Solana or whatever, in some ways, and no one will probably admit this publicly, some ways we are like, we want the Web3 current ecosystem to build out tools that the normies come and buy in some form of like exit liquidity or whatever. Whereas what I understand Sony is building, it's like, no, we're building this chain for outside people to start building on the chain and outside consumers to come and start buying. And I don't think that's a very crazy approach, because I want to use one example. I have a friend of mine who buys a lot of, so derivative artworks in the comic industry is like a big thing. There are specific artists who only do Spider-Man comics or Spider-Man artworks or Naruto artworks. They come under derivative artworks, which are allowed legally under their IP laws. So there are very famous artists. I have a friend of mine, he spends hundreds and thousands of dollars of getting these signed prints, signed artworks, limited edition. So tomorrow, if Sony has certain IPs under their ecosystem and they are like, okay, B-Check is like an artist and he wants to build something that's under the Sony IP and he wants to be a derivative artist, he can come and mint his artwork on Sony ecosystem. It's a great way for them to really capitalize on that side of industry, because I don't think any major company, whether it's DC, whether it's Marvel, has like really made money on passively on like secondary form of like artists and artworks that are being made. So yeah, I think it is a hot take, because it's kind of moving away from like a slightly decentralized network. But I feel like, in my view, there's a difference between decentralized technology and decentralized IP. And I think that's a conversation a lot of people don't like to have. Even like we've had this struggle on like ApeChain. When ApeChain launched, they had Bored Apes with blue backgrounds, and people are like, okay, would Bored Ape DMCA this? Or on Base, you had like Fog and a bunch of NFT collections literally changing that background. And like, we don't talk about this, that, oh, this is actually a problem. We don't want this. And big IP ecosystems, even like Pudgies, even like Azukis wouldn't want that. So I think it's kind of a hard take, but I think the direction that they're going isn't very crazy, in my opinion.
Fantastic summary and very, very helpful take there. The thing that I was just going to back you up from, I think this is copy pasted, a little bit of a screenshot from how Sony are thinking about it. In their IP and contracts restriction section, they say, at Sonium, we are committed to fostering a secure and respectful ecosystem for all stakeholders while safeguarding intellectual property rights and protecting users from malicious activities. Why we have this restriction system: protecting intellectual property rights, mitigating risks to users, building a healthy ecosystem. I think it is a reasonable thing. I've been having some conversations with people in the Story Protocol ecosystem. I wonder if there's a way, and maybe there will be a way, to respect your creativity. Like if you want to launch something which is linked to something else in some way, but by the person from whom you are inspired, be able to, in an on-chain way, be able to connect those two things, just to give them like a shout out, to show your respect to that thing. So I was chatting to the guys from Mycelium yesterday, who are, working out on some ideas on how to be able to do that. Before this, I was a lawyer as well. So I think, but the problem is with the IP, it's kind of got out of control. Right? And I think a lot of people have thought, because it's got out of control, well, there is no way to control this. Everyone therefore should be able to do what they want. If you work really hard on IP, like I completely sympathize with the companies that want to protect it. And I think, to your point, Rahim, there are companies within this industry. It's not like this is only legacy media, Web 2, someone's who want to. It's not like only Marvel that would want their IP protected. Like Bored Apes, Azuki, like there's very significant IP in Web 3 now that's been made natively that would want their stuff to be protected now. So look, I don't know the specific details of what they started blocking, and I think people always get a bit triggered when their money gets frozen. And look, that is bad. Like it's not good that their funds have got lost or frozen. I hope that there's a solution for that aspect. But in principle, the concept of trying to make sure IP creators are protected, and then also allowing people to remix stuff and respect their creativity, so long as some type of bond or connection or respect is shown to the original creator, I think would be very, very cool. Legendary, I'll probably come to you last. I know Funky's already got his hand raised. We're running out of time today. Funky, your hand is raised. What are your thoughts on this? Then we'll close off with Legendary.
Just some real quick thoughts. So Astar Network is actually the company that built Sonium. Astar Network wants to be the blockchain of Japan. This is actually a Polkadot chain. So it was, they built a substrate side and then they built an EVM side. This was always the plan. The EVM side, at first they were going to do ZK EVM through Polygon, then they decided to scrap that idea. They've been working with Sony for about 3 years now. There's a separate entity called Startail Labs. Sota Watanabe is the founder and sort of CEO of Astar Network. He is an absolute BD machine. He wants to make Astar the blockchain of Japan. And Sonium, this partnership has been long in coming. So it would be great to try and get Sota on here and talk about this. It's really interesting what they're trying to build with this whole entertainment focus. But you know, in terms of the IP thing, I think you guys have really covered it well. It's you kind of have to protect some of this stuff. And Sony is such a huge brand. There's too much for them to lose. You know, and not being, so I think a middle ground is probably the best approach, but just wanted to give you some of that backstory and context for Sonium and Astar.
I love it. If you can get hold of the founder, then yeah, that'd be fantastic to have that bigger conversation. We're doing those interviews every Friday. There will be one published this week, not done live. And then from next week, we're going to be live again with those interviews. So we'd appreciate that, Funk. Final thought, Legendary, from you, close us out. What's your final conclusion here?
Yeah, I personally not as negative towards that centralized aspect of it, because it's been a direction that we've been going for quite a while. It's the same with the saying by Kyle Samani, partner at Multicoin Capital, who said the future of Ethereum is Coinbase. And Nick Tomino said ETH is the ticker, Base is the dev platform, Coinbase is the distribution. Obviously, you had those issues with Coinbase accounts being frozen. So yes, it goes against the ethos of the original values in crypto, but the scaling for ETH and the distribution that we've seen done successfully has been done in a bit more of a centralized way. And I mean, there's also people calling Base the Fed chain for what it's worth. But I think we like centralization.
There are many Fed chains.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're not allowed to do any single thing that you want whenever you want to do it, it's basically a Fed chain.
It's a Fed chain, yeah. And ultimately, look, it's a good Fed chain if numbers go up, if Virtual's ecosystem goes up. It's a good Fed chain if Blast had a hack and then they can close the bridge and the hacker's funds are contained and can be returned to the users. Centralization is very good. And centralization is bad when we don't like it because our accounts get frozen. And I feel like we are far away from a perfect answer to how to basically have the best of both centralized and decentralized aspects. And I feel like every blockchain is trying to figure out what their own personal best approach is, depending also on the environment where they're coming from. And ultimately, you as the user have the freedom of choice to interact with the chains that you like and that align with your values, but also you have the freedom to criticize what you don't like. And I feel like this conversation will be helpful to get closer to a good answer of how that balance between centralization and decentralization will look like in the future.
Well, I can't finish it off better than that. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We've gone a little bit over today, 5 minutes over, but just a reminder, if you're new here, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X video on YouTube, and you can catch us on Apple and Spotify podcasts too. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and we will see you back tomorrow. Bye-bye.